We have a history that supersedes music.
Allegedly a romantical thing. It's all right. I'll say alleged, but we know. Yeah, she hit it before Beyonce.
When Jay and I was in there doing basketball awards, you can't tell me Jay didn't see a 14-year-old girl come in the studio and sit on R. Kelly's lap.
Wendy Williams has never been one to hold her tongue, but this time, her words may have blown the lid off a secret that's been buried for over a decade. Jay-Z, Foxy Brown, and a relationship that didn't just cross mentorship boundaries may have completely derailed her future. This is something folks already whispered about, especially since Foxy and Jay worked so closely. But now, with a memoir on the horizon and vintage clips resurfacing, the industry's dirtiest rumors are becoming full-blown accusations. The lawsuit claims it all started with a party hosted by none other than Sean Diddy Combs over 20 years ago. So, why did Foxy disappear at her peak? Why is Jay-Z still sidestepping questions about her early rise? And how does Diddy even tie into this? The deeper you look, the more Wendy's words stop sounding messy and start sounding like facts. Before the backlash, before the silence, before the industry turned cold, there was just a teenage girl from Brooklyn with a voice you couldn't ignore. Foxy Brown, born Inga DiCarlo Fung Marshing, carried a powerful mix of Afro, Indo, and Chinese Trinidadian root soul pouring into one sharp, unapologetic New York sound. She wasn't born into fame, but she was born with undeniable talent. By 14, she was already making heads turn, not in a maybe one day kind of way, but in a who is this girl kind of way. Then came the night in 1994. A freestyle at a local talent show changed her life. Sitting in the crowd, legendary producers Tone and Poke, the duo behind LL Cool J's Mr. Smith album, they heard her, saw her, and threw her straight onto a remix track. That track, LL Cool J's I Shot Ya remix. LL thought the verse came from a grown man. That's how raw her delivery was. When he found out it was a teenager that sealed it, Foxy was in. And she didn't just arrive, she exploded by 1996. Before she even turned 18, Foxy Brown was everywhere. From Tony Braxton's Yo Me High remix, to Case's Touch Me, Tease Me, to the one that changed it all, Jay-Z's Ain't No N. That track wasn't just a hit, it bonded them. That playful, magnetic chemistry, it wasn't just on wax. Behind the scenes, rumors were already swirling. Wendy didn't start the fire, but she might have been the first to say it on air.
It's all right. I'll say alleged, but we know. Yeah, she hit it before Beyonce.
People laughed it off, but Foxy, she wasn't laughing. At the time, she was a teenager and Jay-Z was 27. What started as a collab turned into something deeper. For a few years, they looked inseparable on stage and off. Hits, appearances, co-signs, they elevated each other. Then suddenly it stopped. The partnership ended. The music dried up. Jay moved on and Foxy started fading. At first it looked like typical industry fallout. Maybe creative beef, maybe drama with Lil' Kim, but there was much more, because this wasn't about a rap rivalry, it was about power. Around 2003, Foxy started dropping hints. In her diss track Let Know, she didn't bite her tongue, she aired it all out. And Jay-Z, he didn't respond. Not in music, not in interviews, just silence. Then the doors started closing. Her albums got shelved. Dil Na Na 2, The Fever never dropped. Her label deals got messy. She began naming names Sly Cohen, Diddy, them out for sabotaging her path. But the part no one was brave enough to say, Jay-Z wasn't backing her anymore. Whispers said she knew too much. Knew the private Jay-Z, the one he keeps hidden beneath the polished mogul brand. And for someone like Hov, who built his empire on silence and strategy, that was dangerous, real dangerous. Insiders say he began pulling strings behind the scenes, allegedly silencing Foxy with NDAs, payoffs, career blocks, anything to keep her quiet. Because if she talked, really talked, it wouldn't just stain his legacy, it could link him to others. To Diddy, and that's why the silence makes sense. Foxy didn't fall off, she was erased, shut out, cut off by the very same men who once called her family. If she were just another artist with an axe to grind, people would have moved on. But Foxy's story is different, because it doesn't stop with Jay. It extends to another icon, one currently watching his own empire collapse in public. Sean Diddy Combs. To understand the full weight of Foxy's silence, look at who she was around. In the 90s and early 2000s, she wasn't just in hip-hop, she was seated beside its kings. Jay-Z, Diddy. These weren't colleagues, they were power brokers. And Foxy, she was the crown jewel with a memory like a vault. Back then no one questioned it, but today, with Diddy facing lawsuits, federal raids, and firestorm-level accusations, Foxy's silence isn't just suspicious, it's explosive. She had a reputation for disappearing. One minute she was lighting up the charts, the next, gone. But if you trace the timeline, her vanishing act always seemed to follow the moment she tried to speak up. There were quiet rumors about an S-tape, one allegedly involving Foxy, Jay-Z, and Jamie Foxx. Whispers claimed Jay forced her into signing multiple NDAs, but lost in the noise was speculation that Diddy may have known about the tape, or even helped keep it buried. In this business, Secrets aren't just dangerous, they're valuable. And Foxy, she had a vault full, but instead of cashing in, she disappeared. Not because she chose to, but because the very men she once trusted may have ensured she had no other option. And now that Diddy's facing allegations ranging from sexual assault to drug abuse to physical violence, the question becomes impossible to ignore. Did Foxy know all along? March 25, 2024. Federal agents raid Diddy's homes in LA and Miami. They seize phones, find weapons, and confirm what people online had long suspected, that Diddy's polished image was hiding something much darker. Lawsuits followed. Claims of sexual misconduct, NDAs, hush money, the same patterns Foxy hinted at years ago. One of the lawsuits came from R&B singer Cassie. She described Diddy as violent, manipulative, and cruel. Suddenly Foxy's silence doesn't look like retreat, it looks like survival, because here's the truth they never want exposed. Jay-Z and Diddy have shielded one another for years. Business deals, public appearances, carefully maintained images, they moved in sync. So if Foxy had dirt on one, she likely had dirt on both. That's why Wendy Williams struck a nerve, because if Foxy ever decided to tell the truth without NDAs, without fear, without censorship, it wouldn't just put Jay-Z in the crosshairs, it would shake the whole empire. But long before anyone realized how dangerous Foxy could be to them, we should have asked what they had already done to her by the time the world noticed Foxy Brown was missing from the spotlight. The damage was done. On the surface, she was written off as another troubled artist. The headlines called her volatile, unpredictable, a diva with too many tantrums and not enough discipline. But that was never the full truth. It never is. What the media ignored, and what Foxy was likely too scared to say, is that she wasn't falling apart by herself. She was crumbling under pressure. The kind of pressure you feel when grown men control your career, your image, maybe even your body. Foxy never released a neat, polished statement about what happened, but her life told the story loud and clear. In 2000, she checked herself into Cornell University Medical Center. Not for PR, not to rebuild a brand. She was addicted to opioids. She admitted she couldn't even perform or record music without morphine. This wasn't about clubbing, it was about survival. And the timing is no coincidence. Her downfall started soon after she was allegedly blacklisted, after the ties with Jay-Z and Diddy soured, after the albums stalled and the support vanished. The same people who once called her family now acted like she didn't exist. Then came tragedy. In 2001, Foxy's uncle died in the crash of American Airlines Flight 587. A devastating loss that shattered her emotionally. Already battling addiction and depression, the grief pushed her even deeper into isolation. Soon after, she began skipping tour dates, canceling appearances, and vanishing for months at a time. Her health hit another wall in 2005, when she suffered sudden, severe hearing loss. For over a year, she needed a hearing aid, relied on touch to communicate, and had to figure out how to stay in the rap game when she couldn't hear the beat. But Foxy wasn't done. In 2006, after surgery restored part of her hearing, she tried to return. She recorded Black Roses, resigned to Def Jam under Jazzy's leadership, and promised a fresh start. But the album never came out. She found her voice again but couldn't escape the shadow hanging over her. The industry had moved on. The people who once called her Little Sis now saw her as a liability. And maybe they were right, because by then, Foxy wasn't just another MC trying to make a comeback. She was a witness, a woman with too many memories, and too much truth. She knew things about Jay-Z, about Diddy, about what happens when a girl in this business is no longer useful. Foxy didn't fall because she lost her gift. She fell because she lost her protection. And the question nobody asks is the one that matters most. What happens to a woman when she's silenced, thrown away, and mocked for disappearing? For years, whenever people asked what happened to Foxy Brown, the answer was easy. She beefed with Lil' Kim. That was the media's story. Two Brooklyn girls, both fiery, both sexy, both dropping debut albums just a week apart. On paper, it was the perfect female rap rivalry. Foxy had Ill Na Na, Kim had hardcore, and just like that, the industry locked them into a feud neither of them had asked for. But, in reality, that wasn't beef, it was a distraction. A convenient cover.
New York City radio station Hot 97 last week. Police say it was Lil' Kim's posse versus friends of Foxy Brown. 5 guns in all, 21 shots fired, and 1 man shot in the back.
But the truth, Foxy and Kim didn't start as enemies. They went to the same high school, Brooklyn College, Academy, and even had a mutual friend who introduced them. Their only joint feature was on the remix of Total's No One Else. Alongside Debrat. Back then, they were cool. But in hip-hop, 2 powerful black women can't be allowed to coexist, not without being turned into rivals. That's not a feud. That's a storyline, one written by execs, magazines, and the male-dominated industry around them. They were shaped, branded, and sold to the public like a storyline. The drama peaked in 1997, when both women landed on the cover of The Source under the headline Harlots, or Hero. Once coded language translation, pick a side. While fans debated outfits and punchlines, they missed the bigger question: who was really pulling the strings behind the scenes? Here's what most never heard. Industry insiders claim that Def Jam's then CEO, Lyor Cohen, actually wanted Foxy and Kim to release a joint album. It could have changed the game iconic in history making, but it never happened. Not because they lacked talent, but because those in power wanted war, not unity. As the 2000s rolled in, the feud got nastier, diss tracks started flying. Lil Kim dropped Notorious Kim with clear shots. Foxy fired back on Capone Noriaga's Bang Bang. Then came the moment that crossed the line. February 2001, outside Hot 97, their entourages clashed in a violent altercation. One man was hurt. The media ran wild with it. But here's what nobody questioned. Why did this beef overshadow everything else Foxy was battling? While the press milked her feud with Kim, they looked past the rest. Her addiction, the hearing loss, the shelved albums, the NDAs, and her proximity to two of the most powerful and controversial men in hip-hop, Jay-Z and Diddy. That wasn't a coincidence. Foxy versus Kim became the perfect distraction. A media circus, one that gave the men in charge an excuse to quietly walk away from Foxy without anyone asking why. And it worked. To this day, the feud is remembered like it was the main event in her story. But in truth, it was a smokescreen, because once you look beyond the so-called beef, you start to see the real reason she was shut down. And it had nothing to do with Kim. When Foxy hinted at a relationship with Jay-Z while she was still a teenager, it wasn't just controversial, it was a warning sign. But what if she wasn't alone? What if her story wasn't unique, but part of a disturbing pattern? Once you line up the timelines, the lyrics, the photos, it gets harder to ignore. Let's start with the biggest name of all, Beyoncé. Today, they're seen as the ultimate power couple. But rewind the clock, and the picture gets blurry. In a 17 magazine interview, Beyoncé once said she met Jay-Z at 18. That's the story she stood by, until the internet pulled out the receipts. In 1997, Jay-Z and Beyoncé were photographed together on the set of Destiny's Child's debut video. No. Beyoncé was just 16. Later, during an interview with Oprah, Beyoncé said they dated a year and a half after meeting. We were friends. First for a year and a half before we went on any date. We talked on the phone for a year and a half. That would put her at 17 when the relationship began. Jay-Z was 28. Some fans brushed it off, said it was barely legal. But that's the problem. When powerful men get involved with teenage girls just entering the industry, it's too often excused as mentorship or ambition. But for those girls, the line between opportunity and exploitation is razor thin, and Beyoncé wasn't the only one. There were long-standing rumors about Aaliyah. Most remember her illegal marriage to R. Kelly at age 15. But few talk about the fact that Jay-Z was reportedly pursuing her too. According to former Death Row exec Reggie Wright Jr., Jay-Z was one of multiple older men who orbited the world during her final years. She was young, famous, and constantly surrounded by men far older than her.
Expose somebody that we all forget about. Y'all see this picture of Jay-Z with Aaliyah when she was y'all forgot about Jay, huh?
Here's the twist. Jay-Z didn't end up with Aaliyah because his own business partner, Damon Dash, started dating her. Some say Jay was bitter. Others say he just moved on. Either way, the pattern didn't end.
When Jay and I was in there doing basketball boys, you can't tell me Jay didn't see a 14-year-old girl come in the studio and sit on R. Kelly's lap.
And it wasn't just speculation. Nas said it publicly. He went on Wendy Williams' show and said it flat out. If Jay-Z worked side by side with R. Kelly on the Best of Both Worlds album, he had to know. Teenage girls hanging around the studio, being brought in, shown off. And instead of walking away, Jay-Z doubled down. He made the album anyway. That's not just complicity, that's tolerance. This isn't about one girl, it's a pattern. A trail of young women drawn into Jay-Z's orbit before they even realize the danger. And Jay-Z, he's never addressed any of it. No lawsuits, no denials, no clarifications. Because to deny it means someone else might speak. And if that ever happens, the whole empire could crack. Foxy Brown never got the ending she deserved. No farewell tour, no Netflix special, no flowers at award shows. She just vanished. For years, the industry painted her as a burnout, but that was never the truth. She didn't fade away. She was erased by the same powerful men who once stood beside her. Men who built careers off image control and silence. Jay-Z mastered branding. Diddy mastered illusion. And Foxy, she mastered remembering. She was there before the billion-dollar brands and before the federal investigations. She saw the power these men wielded and how they used it, especially around young women who hadn't yet learned the cost of saying yes. Foxy's fall wasn't because she lacked talent, it was because she knew too much. That's why, even today, her name still makes certain people uncomfortable, because she was never just another rapper. She was a witness, a liability, a walking threat to carefully constructed legacies. So when Wendy Williams said Jay-Z and Diddy were afraid of Foxy Brown, people laughed, they rolled their eyes, called it messy gossip. But maybe Wendy wasn't reaching. Maybe the fear isn't about what Foxy did, maybe it's about what she survived, because sometimes a woman doesn't need to write a tell-all to destroy you. Sometimes all it takes is her presence, her memory, and the quiet knowledge that if she ever decides to speak, it's over. Foxy Brown is still standing, and as long as she is, their secrets are not safe. Anyway, that's it for this one. See y'all in the next video.